Hello and welcome to Performance Driving Fundamentals. Today we're going to be talking about our attitudes and mental approaches towards receiving racing coaching, doing high performance driving education events and track days, or using a driving simulator as a training tool, okay? So what we're going to talk about today is these attitudes, how to implement them, and hopefully how to think about your learning in order to help you go faster, whether you're already a beginner driver, an intermediate, or an advanced level driver. So a common misconception that I get from a lot of students, and also something I do myself when I get really frustrated and I'm off pace, is I kind of start whipping out buzzwords, or I start thinking, hey, this person must be using a different technique than me, or they must be doing something crazy and outlandish to get more pace out of the car. And to be blunt, that's almost never the case, except for extremely special circumstances and notable examples like Fernando Alonso's odd steering technique or Ayrton Senna's weird throttle blipping to keep the turbo spooled. 90% of cars are going to drive with a nominative, normalized technique because they're all designed by relatively similar engineers who know what drivers want out of vehicles in terms of feedback and handling characteristics. All driving comes from core form and fundamental skills. Nobody's doing something that you're not. They might not be doing something that you are if you're making a mistake, but all of your pace will come down to making sure your braking shape is good, you're coasting into the corner the right amount, you're picking up the throttle in the correct position, you're squeezing on it gently, you're using the whole track width and the whole surface, and you're making sure you're getting the most grip out of the car at every single available phase of the corner. Professionals just have perfect core skills and don't make very many mistakes. That's why they're pros. Another one of the misconceptions that we run into a lot is misconceptions about learning speed. Most people think it's going to be pretty linear at first, right? Okay, I'm going to get in the car, and sure, it might be difficult, but I'll continue to consistently learn all the way throughout racing, and these people often really struggle when they start to get to the point of intermediate or advanced level skill. The reason why they struggle is, as we start to get better and the amount we're improving tapers off, and it's harder to find new ways to improve, we're going to start getting frustrated if we think that we should just be improving constantly, surely, right? Or they might be an intermediate level driver or a high level beginner driver, a novice driver with a lot of experience and track time who isn't improving at all because they're not focusing on the right things and they don't know how to spot their own mistakes or self-coach yet, and they really need some time with the coach or a driving instructor to help identify what they could improve on. The good thing for those people, and if you are at that level as a driver, is the most you're going to improve happens when you fix the simplest, largest mistakes that are the most obvious. So you'll get way better very quickly. Now, that's not to say that when we hit a certain critical mass that we just stop improving at all, right? So there's two things. You can think of learning as a logarithmic curve where you start off not improving at all and then you improve a ton all at once. This is very rare. This is not how learning should happen. Again, this will only happen if you've been stuck at the same level for a very long time and it's really, really suboptimal. Okay, so when I learn these new techniques, maybe I take nice linear little steps up and I get a bit better, and then I stay at that level for a while, and then I get a bit better, and then I stay at that level for a bit while, and then I get a little bit better, right? Would seem like it makes sense, but is not always the case for all students. What's going to happen is, as you learn different techniques, you're going to take little steps in your learning of different sizes. Maybe you gain a lot from learning a new technique, maybe you only gain a tiny bit, or you might even get slower. Then you're actually going to atrophy in skill for a while as you get complacent with your new skills. You're going to be worse or get stuck at a rut where you're at the same level, but you're not going to be gradually improving. Then you're going to find another technique or blend two techniques together a little bit better, or learn a little bit more about grip or really ace a track, and then you're going to take that next little step up. The longer this goes on and we get more and more towards being an advanced level driver, the more likely we are going to run into getting stuck at a step for a very long time, and then when we improve, we only improve a very slight amount. That's kind of bad news if you've already been driving a long time, but if you're new, the great thing about that is, again, the most learning and improvement you're going to find is from learning the core driving form in the very beginning as soon as possible, and then you'll get very proficient very quickly. The next thing is practice. Tires are expensive, fuel is expensive, getting beat up by a race car is exhausting, and we might not have that much vacation time. Something that we often see is drivers trying to make up for a lack of skill by prepping constantly. Now, if you don't have the amount of money to practice constantly or rent out a racetrack for private testing, you're going to be in a little bit of a pickle if you're trying to learn that way. Conversely, if you're a simulation software user and you use the simulator as your training aid and then go to a real life race, an autocross, an auto solo, or a rally, you might not find that your simulation software has the exact type of car and track combination that you're going to be driving. So it might not be directly one-to-one applicable. In both of these cases, the best thing to do, again, focus on your core form when practicing. Even if you have a private, Trek day, or you've rented out a track and you're going to have a lot of testing time, chunk out your practice into small 15 to 30 minute segments where you can prove a concept or try out a new technique, figure out how it feels, and then you want to take 30 minutes to an hour, at least as much digestion time as training time. I want to be clear about that. 1-to-1 practice to study ratio, at least. To think about that technique, digest it, work it into your driving style, go over your data if you have data review software, go over your cameras if you have video, and make sure that you're using that technique appropriately and that it works. If it does work, continue to add it into your retinue of techniques you're currently using as an addition or an alteration, and if it doesn't, discard it and move on, right? And you got to make that decision pretty quickly because track time is very limited, okay? If you're on the simulation software side of things and you practice constantly, you're going to run into extreme mental fatigue. That brings us on to our fourth point about your approach towards training. Sleep on it. It's free time, okay? The same way that your muscles get damaged and rebuilt when you go and see your personal trainer, and you can't just keep training, you need to rest and let your brain digest the new information. Sleep is the time when the human body and mind develops the most muscle mass as it's rebuilding its muscles for the night with the calories it intake during the day, but it's also the time when your brain is making the most new chemical connections. You're making new synapses, and dreaming is actually a function of your brain making hypothetical situations in your mind for you to then problem solve. So you're getting mental practice in your sleep. You got to eat, sleep, and dream your coaching if you want to get the most out of it. Because of this, I recommend combining a short practice session for an event that's 1 or 2 days from now, that's only 30 minutes long at 8 to 10 p.m. your time, about an hour before your bedtime, and not digesting any more information before you go to sleep. Practice, review your data, brush your teeth and shower, and sleep. Don't do anything else. And then the next day, go throughout your business as normal before you go and leave for the track or go to train again or go and do your sim race or your autocross or whatever event you're going to be attending. That should make sure that you're essentially getting free training time as your brain thinks through your coaching you just did in your sleep for the event the next day. I've had students gain 3 to 4 seconds a lap if they're a beginner level student with a lot of improvement to make by doing a 30-minute session and then waking up and practicing and warming up for about 15 minutes the next day, an hour or two before an event. They'll find they've made massive improvements. And trust me, it works. It's basically free time. The last thing I want to go on about, and I honestly probably should have put this in the beginning, but if you're still here, I appreciate you, is that you shouldn't think that race coaching, training, or driving a racing car with the proper technique is either above you, not available to you, too difficult for you, or would detract from your enjoyment of performance driving. Most human beings feel the best when they're getting the most amount of benefit for the least amount of effort. Making sure that you study the proper driving technique, practice the proper drills, focus on your core form skills when driving the car, and make sure that you're not over practicing and exhausting yourself is going to allow you to get the most amount of fun and benefit from the least amount of training time. Race coaching and race theory is kind of dry and it's not the most fun, but you don't have to be bored with it when you're actually using it driving the race car, because when you find that it's improving your lap times and it's making it so that you can train less while getting more benefit from it, you're spending less time doing the not fun part of racing and spending more time actually racing or actually improving or being able to work on the car or being able to hang out with your friends after the race instead of having to, review data for 3 or 4 or 5 hours a night. Don't push yourself past the point of diminishing marginal returns and think that training is only for people who take it far too seriously or do it professionally. You can gain a lot of benefit out of some simple core form drills and just double checking your fundamental technique when you're driving. Training can be fun. You just have to make sure that you're double checking yourself whenever you're driving, and then all of your driving counts as training and you're having fun at the same time and constantly improving. Come to a race. Work corners, work flags. If you can't afford to drive, find a way to volunteer. High performance driving education, and the various racing organizations of the world want you there. We want you out at the track. We want you having fun. We want you enjoying your life, and you are welcome. Anybody can drive.